So if we're going to take you over here to the exam table, this very fancy exam table that we have. Now, I would help her up to the thing, okay? Now, when I'm helping her up, if I was at the other end, because I'm right-handed, not left-handed, but I would be helping her up and I'd touch her back. Now, what am I checking from her back? I'm checking in the area of the scapula to feel if there looks like there's muscle wasting there. I also might be feeling the muscle and fat over her ribs. If I can feel that, no matter what her weight's telling me, it tells me there's chronic loss of lean tissue. Now, let's say that you had very low blood protein. Your albumin was low, transferrin was low. What would your ankles look like? Probably swollen. They'd be swollen, okay? Now you come into the hospital, what happens to your legs? You get put in bed, your legs are elevated, lots of times your head is elevated. So where does your fluid go? Here. It can go there, or here. Lots of times it's over the sacrum. And so lots of times if you touch someone back there, and I always say, is it okay if I touch? But the reality is you can have, to the point where it's so bad that you can't even push in. It feels like wood. So if somebody says, oh, their feet look so much better, and they've been sitting in a bed with their head up, always look to the sacrum to see what's going on there. The other thing is there are things that we can do functionally that tells. Very simple things. Now, lots of times dietitians don't have an exam room to be examining people. So I could have you do this in the chair. But we'll let you sit here so everybody can see you. Don't get off that easily. So if I want to see what her function is, I'm going to say, I want you to show me how strong you are. So I'm going to push against you. You put your hands like this, and I'm going to push towards you. You show me how good you are, okay? She's not letting me push in. Now, which muscles is that having an impact? Okay, so if I want to have the other direction and go this way, okay? So we're looking at biceps, triceps. We can do it this way. I can pull out or push in, and that tells me about our lower extremity. Now, where is most of the muscle mass in the body? Up below the waist or above the waist? Good answer. My patient knows it. Come on, guys. You think about it. You've got your quadriceps. If you think about it, I have most of my fat below my waist too. But even me, most of my muscle is below my waist. Okay, if I want to look at malnutrition-related muscle loss, do I look above the waist or do I look below the waist? Both. Why both? Big voice so they can hear you.
If the patient doesn't walk and it's bedridden, the wasting means all over.
But most of it's going to be down here.
Down here.
If I want to only look at nutritional loss and not inactivity, look above the waist. Yes, because what's happening is this is going to be a combination of inactivity and malnutrition. This is going to be malnutrition. And even if I'm bedridden, for me to move myself around in the bed, I still have to use my upper extremities. You probably would think that I still have to talk with my hands. So all of that, if I have to feed myself, I'm still using my upper extremities. Okay? Now, lots of times people say if you want to check muscle tone, have them tense their muscles. Do you know how to tense your muscle? Probably not very well. Why don't you put your leg out, and I'm going to try and do this. Now she knows how to tense her muscle. So telling people to tense it is not as good as actually having the muscle function, and then you can actually see how good the tone is. Now, we have somebody that we've also asked in the front row to perhaps, is this the time that we should do this, Harriet, or later? Okay, Sónia. I'm going to bring, is there anything else you'd like to ask, other than giving her a round of applause, anything else you'd like to ask our patient here in terms of her physical? If you were a patient, would you feel uncomfortable with me as a dietitian or a nutritionist if I'm telling you why I'm doing this, of me touching it?
No.
Would any of your patients?
No.
What I think is important is how comfortable you feel in doing it, because that comes across to the patient. When I was a very early student, I think I was a first-year student, and I was doing something, and I had a patient who said, I don't want to be like your experiment. How many of these have you done? I said, enough. He said, that's all I wanted to know. Enough could have been 1, enough could have been 50. He just wanted to know that I felt comfortable, and I had no good answer to him other than, I done enough of these. Okay, fine, let's go, we'll go do it. So I'm going to let you down again, and we're going to give her a round of applause. Now, the other thing that I lots of times will talk about is these components are important. You know how to turn that on, you've done it before. However you want to do it. How do you want to do it? One of the other things that I do when I'm talking to people about doing a physical exam is you have to check for asymmetry. Because if someone has had a stroke, or they've had an accident, or they're in a wheelchair, or a number of other things, it's the asymmetry and how well the totality, the muscle represents what's nutrition and what may be neurologic deficit. And I had met this really remarkable woman last time when we were having this in December. Her name is Sónia. I think a few of you also know her. And perhaps not as much as Teresa, but you will after today. And one of the things that we thought would be helpful is if we could also have her address some of the things that may be unique to someone that's in a wheelchair that would make you feel more comfortable in terms of asking questions, of doing the physical exam, etc. And do we know where her slides are? Because I know she has a few slides she wants to show.
You can do them later. Slides,
Well,
or do you have them already? No, we can do that in the
we can do that later, but you can at least talk at this point.
Of course. If you have someone, for example, like me, in your consultation, some things are not so easy to understand if I could walk, because I have some muscle atrophy because of my paraplegic. So if you look to my legs are thin, and so you can't think that I am malnourished because my legs are thin. There's another thing that is important, is the edema. At the end of the day,
If you'd like to speak in Portuguese, go ahead.
no, I speak in English.
Okay.
No, I think.
But for now, if it's easier,
No, they must understand English, I think. So if you have, it's normal for at the end of the day have edema for someone who's always sitting. So if you see a patient in the morning and they have edema, it's not too normal. So you may need to ask if they have edema at the end of the day, and if when wake up they have not edema at all. And that you have to associate with food intake. Okay, I can have edema in the morning, even if I don't have any renal problem or anything that can cause the edema. You can have to know what is my protein and energy intake. Okay, so that's one thing. About strength, that's why I answered when you asked about the muscle, because, for example, paraplegic have more working muscle in the up. That's why I answered that. There's another thing, important thing to notice and to ask. For example, I can't go on that over there because it's too high. But even if it was lower, you can ask your patient, if he's in a wheelchair, what about his daily activities? As he has some difficulty of making his transferring for a chair, for going to the bath, for example in the car. So there's some special
So it's
things.
more if there's been changes, things that they used to be able to do, that since they're going through treatment or other things that they find more difficult?
Yes, yeah. And maybe needing some help going in the bath for someone who's doing it by its own. So there's some different things that you can ask if you have someone in a wheelchair. Another thing which is important, we don't have, for example, here in Portugal, is a place for weighing people like me. I control my weight in the laundry because they have a scale, and then every week I go there to change my bata, my gown or my coat. I control my weight there. There's no scales for persons in wheelchair to go. So when we have a patient in a wheelchair, because there's difference. There's the patient who comes in a wheelchair in your consultation, and it's only the chair. It's only a vehicle to go there. They can stand for weighing, but no, me, I can't. So if I have a patient like me, or typical, or a bedridden, sometimes I have to ask the laundry. Oh, please, I have this patient. Can it go down to control the weight? And there's another problem. It's to know the weight of your chair. So there's lots of things that are not so easy for. It's different from a person who is in a wheelchair or standing.
And then the issue of the weight comes up in other settings of people who may not, it's the first time you've seen them and they don't have a scale at home, or they haven't been to a doctor in years. And so one way that I get around that is I'll say, how do your clothes fit?
Yes.
And sometimes they'll say, I'm down like 3 sizes. That tells me how much weight they lost. And then the PG-SGA from that point on, since we will have a weight, except in a situation like yours, I will then follow that. But I think that the weight is something that can sometimes be a problem.
Yes. There's another thing, maybe in another disability, like muscle dystrophy, you can't use this
to
represent loss of muscle. So it's good, like Carla was saying, we have to look at the patient, not because now we have everything in computer. So computer, and then you don't look at the patient, but you have to have time and to look.
And think about.
Yes.
Not everything fits everyone, and
Yes.
I think that's one of the important things. Any questions that people have for Sónia? Because this is, I think it was very nice that she was willing to share some of it. She's got some slides that she'll show a bit later. But are there any questions you have before we go back to the last slides? And I'm sure you'll be open to some questions later on.
Of course.
Thank you. So we've got Atia, and we've got Sónia, and we've got Teresa. So thank all of them for us. So this is a sneaky physical exam, and basically anyone can do it anywhere, and it's something that's an important component to do. So in terms of triage, we've talked about a lot of the feasibility. One of the things that was so intriguing about the original study is that of those nurses and dietitians, more than a third of them said that the use of the PG-SGA changed their appreciation of treatable nutritional risk or deficit. And again, remember, 80% of the work was done by the patient. So this is something that can actually streamline your patient care, but tells you more than most other screening or assessment tools exactly what you need to do to intervene. So this is the triage. I said we went from 3 to 8 and 4 to 8. Doesn't really make a large difference, but it was something that was a consistent finding, so we changed it. Now the SGA is a categorical, and the PG-SGA using the categories of A, B, and C are also categorical, but the PG-SGA, as it was originally set up with the triage component of the points, is a continuous measure. And the total component is a snapshot of the patient right now. If we use the PG-SGA short form, it's 0 to 36 points. If we do the full form, it's 0 to 39 points. The reality is, it tells you what you need to do. Now, my way of thinking about it, remember back to my anabolic competence, one of the first slides. So in ways of thinking about what an A, B, and C means, A is anabolic, C is catabolic, And B, by definition, I guess must be between. The reality is it lets you understand not so much what they look like, what their weight is, but are they anabolic or catabolic. So let's look at the short form. And I know we had two different starting times, and one was people were supposed to be here at 9:30, and one it was 10, and it looks like most people came with 10, so we're a little behind schedule, but we're doing it because we started a little behind schedule. But this, I think, is really important. And we've also had several other speakers in the middle. So let's review what we know. Who is the best nourished of these patients? 1, 2, or 3? 2. Very good. Who is so that makes 1 and 3, since we know their points are the same, are equally malnourished. I think it's important to know how we get there, because I'm sure there are some of you going, that can't possibly be the case. How could that be? So let's look at the first patient. Now, again, you have a Portuguese version. We'll work on that later, but this is actually in English. And so we'll say this is actually a gentleman who was a patient of mine who actually came in for a port for hydration. And I said, have you seen a dietitian? He says, no, I come in every 2 days to get my IV fluids, but nobody's had me see the dietitian. Well, that was a problem. So we actually worked on his nutrition a little bit there. But when I first met him, he weighed, I don't have my glasses, 148 pounds. His current weight is 148 pounds. 1 month ago, he was 160 pounds. If you calculate that out, that gives him 3 points. And if you look at the worksheet, we'll talk about that. It tells you, looking at the 1 month or 6 months, if you have both, you use the 1 month. That's telling you what's going on most recently. It's less important that they lost a lot of weight 6 months ago, but now they've seen a dietitian and it's gotten better. So they've slowed down their weight. So you use the 1 month weight, and also in the last 2